That's not going to be the intro, don't worry. Right, no. Welcome to Guitar Talk. No, what I thought I'd do in this one was basically talk about octaves, which I think is probably quite a cliche topic because it's all around the kind of idea of breaking out the pentatonic, the sort of standard position that a lot of people use. But hopefully I'm going to be able to show you how to apply it to other licks as well as just to escaping the pentatonic box. But I'll try and keep this short and sweet, but the basic principle behind what I'm going to be discussing today is for, particularly when you're playing faster runs, but you can use it as well for slower playing, just as a means of moving up and down the fretboard. Up and down the fretboard. Anyway, where was I? But yeah, it's the idea of basically taking a shape and a sequence of notes. So a sequence of notes and the shape that forms across two strings, and then repeating it on the next set of two but an octave higher. So it's still the same shape that your hand's playing, but you know, you're moving up an octave. And so basically you don't have to think about it as much. And if you play it across all 6 strings, you're not only covering 3 octaves, you're able to move either up or down the fretboard, but you're using the same shape, so you don't necessarily need to think about it as much if you're playing a bit faster, and that certainly makes things a lot easier, I find. Now, what I'm going to be doing again, working out of our pentatonic scale, B minor, we're going to be getting sick of it by the end of this series, but here it is. That was a sort of soulful legato version, or was it a cop-out version because I was too scared to play it alternate pick, we'll never know. But anyhow, wanting to focus on the D and the G string, the 4 notes that we have there. So on both strings it is the 7th and 9th fret. So yeah, those 2 notes, 4 notes even. And what we can do is we can play those 4 notes an octave lower. So we can play it on the low E and A strings by playing, so it's going to be the same shape, but because it's an octave lower, we end up actually being on the 5th and 7th frets of each. So here it's the same. So you can play that So I've just gone up an octave there, albeit only with 4 notes, and so I've missed out one of the notes of the scale, but that was quite quickly. I didn't really have to think about that. But what we can do is we can add the 5th note of the pentatonic scale and join the whole thing together, so we get something like this. So what I'm doing there is when I reach the 7th fret of the A string there, I'm sliding up to the 9th on the A. So now we're getting all 5 notes of the pentatonic scale in there. So it's like a different way of playing it as opposed to, but then we're adding all these extra notes. So what I'm going to show you here now is if we take this idea and then we add in the octave higher to the middle one that we're starting as well. So our middle position was, we had our lower octave, which was, but we can add in a higher octave now as well. So going to the B and E strings, of the high strings there. So again, it's the same shape, but it's just different frets and different strings. So it's the 10th and 12th fret of both of these strings. So it goes like, so we can use all these shapes in one sequence. Well, let's remind ourselves of the shapes. So we've got, and then we can add in the joining note that I talked about there. So see, so I've gone up 3 octaves already. So just beware here, because we're going, obviously the G and the B strings, there's a relationship of a 3rd as opposed to a 4th, so it is a slightly different shape, but it's the same things. You're sliding up 1 fret and then you're still playing that shape that I mentioned. So the sliding note is always 1 fret higher than the last note of the first 4, if that makes sense. So as I said, down here we had our shape, which was on the low E, we had 5, 7, then on the A 5, 7, then slide up to to that ninth. Then I have the same sequence again, but starting on the next two strings and on higher frets. So it went 7, 9, 7, 9, then sliding up to 11, and then, as I mentioned. So all together again. So basically, how can we make this idea more musical or create sort of longer runs out of it? Well, you know, it's quite easy to create longer passages out of it by basically taking the shapes that we showed there at each octave and applying like a pattern to it. So ascending, we might do something like this. Like that. Descending. I don't know. So you could, I'm just adding in nonsense to these, but it gives it a bit more, there's more notes going on, it sounds maybe a bit cooler. That's my opinion anyway, I hope it does. But what I was doing on the way up there was this kind of idea. And then obviously because I'm not sliding up I didn't carry that on, but you could use it. Anyway, right, so that ascending run, what even was that? Ascending run, I was doing this. So 5, 7, 5, 7, sliding up to the 9, and then onto the 7 of the D string, back to the 9, and then 7, 9 on the D string. So. And repeating that. And then bending there on the 12th fret up to the 14. And that's quite a cool run. So this is a small pattern I've added there. So it's not crazy, but it's a good way of getting from, you know, the low B up to the high. And you can. And the idea is you can combine patterns basically once you get a feel for it. So descending, I'm not even sure what I was doing there. So something like that. So just, you know, kind of get to muck around with that and see what you can come up with. And you can do it in other positions as well. For example, let's take the first 4 notes of the pentatonic scale. So in this case we've got 7, 10, 7, 9 on the E and A strings respectively. But what you can do is actually out of these 4 notes is create an arpeggio. And I'm going to create a B minor arpeggio by creating the B minor triad. And all I'm basically doing there is removing one note. I'm taking out the 7th fret on the A string. So I'm just left with. And that's your B minor triad, B, D and F sharp. And I can just repeat this triad the octave higher up. So that would be 9, 12 on the D string and on the G string 11. Just playing the octave there in the high B, 12th on the B. So that's another example of a nice way of ascending, going up through that. So as you can see, I'm doing this, I'll keep swapping, and I descended using the pattern, but I was just adding more notes. That's quite nice as well. I'll just add that in, plucking that high open B. So I think that's great as well. You can sort of say use that arpeggio, and even the high note, you could go lower. So I ascended using an octave pattern of the higher notes, and descended using, so it all sounded like that. So what I'm gonna, like, you might be thinking, that's, how on earth do I just take this octave concept and start making it sound with all these other notes? What I'm trying to sort of, and I suppose it's the most important part, it's a great way of beginning to visualise the fretboard up and down, because a lot of people I see, not necessarily commenting on mine, but other videos, it's like, how do I start soloing up and down the fretboard? I don't know where I'm going. And octaves provide great reference points because you begin to become familiar with the area. What I mean by that is, for example, if you're familiar with this middle section of the pentatonic scale that you're really used to, you can solo on it, you kind of know where you are. If you then learn that it's exactly the same 4 notes in this shape up here, it helps you solo, and you know, you could that can go on forever. In other areas, you'll just get familiar with all these different octaves, and it'll help to. If you can actually play, but the gist is there. So how do I go about making this musical? Well, I talked about this sort of familiarity of knowing areas. As I say, if you know one area, 4 notes, it'll be just the same but higher up the octave. So if you don't necessarily need to be shredding, you can. So I wasn't shredding, but I was thinking the whole time of these 3 different octave shapes and the one joining note, and I was bending and things, but I was always, you know, that was my sort of framework, and it kind of looks like, you know. Now you could say I could probably play the same thing, going up and down, and it would be a lot harder. You're not going to get that nice slide. So that's what I'm saying. Is it's all about getting familiar, and it was the same with the last concept of the mix. Getting familiar with that sound. I might add, actually, you can do that with the octaves as well. So yeah, there you go. So yeah, I've just prepared a quick backing track here. It's very rough, but I'll jam over it, and as in the last video, I'll maybe exaggerate this concept a bit more and throw it in more than I normally would. But the main thing to look out for is the number of times that I'm just, you know, switching between octave shapes, and try and look out for that. And let's see what comes out. Right, I got carried away a bit there, but I was trying to just, as always, it's one thing you'd maybe just use occasionally. I certainly wouldn't just keep going up and down. So it's a bit difficult to do a whole solo using the concepts, and you start to get focused on it. But anyhow, I hope you enjoyed that lesson. The next one I'm thinking of doing is going to be a bit more of a shreddy pentatonic one. I think it's been a bit long overdue of me doing it. I thought I was going to show how to do all that kind of stuff, because I do that all the time when I'm playing. Yeah, anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this. The last video got really good feedback, and thank you so much, guys. I'm so glad that you all enjoyed it so much, and that's why I've made this one, and hopefully it'll be just as helpful. And as always, I really appreciate your feedback and kind words. It really does mean a lot. So as I say, I hope you enjoyed this one, and hope it all sort of made sense. And I hope you can add this to your playing. I'm sure a lot of you were aware of it already, but you know, it's for those that weren't, or maybe never thought about it. I remember when I was first told, I was like, actually I'd never thought about that like that. So, but anyway, take care, guys.